Okay, welcome to the Shawnee Mission School District's Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. And the first thing we'll do is we'll do introductions. And why don't I start with Dr. Sinclair, and we'll go this way.
I'm Mary Sinclair and serve as the president of the Shawnee Mission School Board.
Susan Lindahl, and I'm a member at large.
Thank you.
Michelle Hubbard, Superintendent.
Joe Gilhouse, Deputy Superintendent.
Russell Knapp, Chief Financial Officer.
Great, thank you. And Melissa Rooker is here. She'll step in just a minute. With that, we'll move through the agenda that's set today, but before I do so, I do want to note that we do have 2 slots for this committee that will be filled in the near term. One is a designee from the school board member from the north area and another one from the northwest area. With the pending elections that are coming up just around the corner, we felt it best to wait until that election takes place, and then once those board members are seated, they'll have the opportunity to appoint the 2 new people to our committee going forward. And with that, I'll turn to number 2 on the item or on the agenda, which is the budget update. And we have Dr. Hubbard, Dr. Gilhouse, and Russell Knapp here. I'll turn to Dr. Hubbard if you'd like to then turn to the staff from there.
Absolutely. So I think we have a PowerPoint.
And I'm going to have you turn your mic on.
We do have a PowerPoint for really all of these categories built into one. So if you want to just go ahead and get us started, Jennifer, I'm going to turn it over to Russ Knapp, who is our Chief Financial Officer, and he's going to do most of this. I'm going to come back and talk about open enrollment, but I'll kick it off to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Hubbard. So as you know, in the state of Kansas, September 20th is our official head count. This is everything is based off the September 20th in attendance for our school to determine what our general state aid is. So we have passed that date, September 20th. We submitted all our enrollment information. We are currently being audited right now. They're in the room in the business office. They'll be here 3 to 4 weeks auditing our enrollment and our weightings. And so we did want to show you this slide on what our current head count is for this September 20th, and that's that yellow highlighted school year of 23-24. Our head count enrollment came in at 26,468. That's 117 kids down from last year, and that's head count. We are funded, though, on FTE, so that's that next column over, 26,047.9. And as if you recall, we are funded on the highest of the 2 prior years, so we already knew what that number was when we built our budget for the current year we were in. So we knew we were going to go up 128.5 FTE just based on enrollment count. So for future years, though, what that means is for 24-25, which is the budget year we're going to be moving into, we already know that the higher the 2 prior years is going to be 23-24, so it'll be that 26,047.9. So we will be flat when we start building our budget for just the regular enrollment FTE, and that will be no change there. And then for 25-26, it'll be based off of 23-24 or 24-25. So if 24-25, which is next year, if our enrollment doesn't rebound any, we will start that budget process with 108.1 FTE down when we go into that budget year. And as you know, we get additional general state aid based on weighted FTEs. And so that's what's being audited now. So in about 3-4 weeks, when they wrap up the audit, we can share with the board what those numbers are. And the weighted FTE impacts current year budget, where the funded FTE here is future year budget. So we'll have that information again after that audit is complete.
Quick question. So is that, hello, Melissa? Welcome. Is that the FTE, and the difference between head count and FTE is like the half-time kindergartners? But are they counted as full-time?
It's kindergartens are full-time now.
Right.
So it's any child that's their minutes are less than 360 minutes. So it could be a 0.8 because maybe they attend we have some kids that go to tennis in the morning, and they only have 6 periods in the day. So that would be a 0.8 versus a 1.0. What are you going to say?
Yeah, that's why I thought, kindergarten was up, so just was trying to get the head count versus FTE. Okay.
Yep.
Is that pre-K in that number?
Pre-K would be 0.5, so we only get funded 0.5 on pre-K. And in the head count, they would count as 1, but for FTE funding, it'd be 0.5.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
So Russ, just to go back and clarify a couple points, the enrollment number is what the base amount in the formula is calculated on, and that's the prior year look back is like when you choose which school year, it's only for the base amount. The weighted add-ons in the formula are for the current students in school, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then I would just flag for the committee that in the last session in the legislature, there was a bill that would have, the bill itself was written to leave the higher of the 2 prior year look back language, but add the option of taking current year enrollment if that was the higher number, so that it was the actual number. Through the legislative process, there were some things that got changed in the bill, and ultimately it changed enough that it was going to cost millions for school funding across the state. And anyway, I would say there is the folks who requested the addition of the current year enrollment are folks representing the DeSoto area because of the explosive growth that their district is facing. So I just raise that as something this committee ought to pay attention to as to what the 2024 legislative session looks like on.
That Spring Hill actually championed the bill initially, but also school districts that were very concerned about open enrollment and what open enrollment, because right now with open enrollment, once our capacity is published, let's say that we gain 100 kids, we're taking those kids with no funding for a year.
Yeah.
And so that's the concern I think most people had and why people were pushing to include the current year.
Yeah, and if you remember history, prior to this change, it was based on 3 years. You could do the higher of your current year or the prior years. So it was almost going back 360.
Also, I want to add one thing that Russ didn't mention is that we do have, probably not a lot, but historically over the years we have had, it ebbs and flows, but homeschool kids that might come in for 2 courses. That would give you a
Difference.
Mhm.
So this slide, I wanted to show you what is kind of the majority of the reason why our enrollment went down this year. We projected 26,547 kids. What we submitted to the state was 26,468 for 79 kids lower than what we projected. And almost all of that is in our kindergarten count. 95, we missed our projected enrollment on kindergarten by 95 kids. So it came in at 1,875, and you can see prior to the pandemic, if you exclude those 3 years, we averaged 2,085 kindergartners. And this is the lowest class since 2002, which was 1,882. So we hope it does rebound next year, but if you look at the birth rates, which is what we get from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, it is trending down. So these are birth rates all across the state of Kansas. So that red arrow over 2017, you can see that's our kindergarten class now, and you can see it took a little bit of a dip there. The other arrow on the left, that's our senior class for 2006. And it's kind of odd that right after that you see a tick up. That's our sophomore class, which is our bubble. So we have a 6th grade bubble and a 10th grade bubble. And you can see that 2008 there, it ticks up. And then you see another little tick up there in, I can't tell what year that is, 2012 maybe. That's our 6th grade class. So it kind of does correlate with the birth rates. So that's kind of where we did pretty good on grades 1 through 12, but we missed the kindergarten class this year.
Also, our RSP study that we did that took to the board, it's probably, I think January, February will be 2 years ago. They predicted a decline with our kindergartners as well.
And is that lower birth rate, that's impacting not just Shawnee Mission, that's across
That's correct.
the state?
Okay, that's all I have for that agenda item.
Do you want to talk about open enrollment real quick?
Go for it.
Since it's on this part. So as you all know, the state legislature passed a bill that required open enrollment in the state of Kansas. And just a kind of an update of where we are. We have a draft policy that went to the Policy Review Committee on Monday. And we are prepared to take that to the November 13th meeting for a first read, and then also to have the hearing that we are required by law to have. And then it'll be a final read in December, so that it would go into effect in January. So it was, it's a pretty long policy and a lot of detail, but that's what it took to just work through all the intricacies of what the law states. So you can be watching for that new open enrollment policy coming soon.
And that was kind of backdated into when we start opening enrollment for, even within the district, right? Which is that date. When do we start opening enrollment? Like transfers and that kind of thing?
So those are different. So do you mean when do we allow internal transfers, or when do we allow students to enroll for the next school year?
I guess both.
Really, we are backing up. I don't have those dates in front of me. I
Okay,
apologize, but
sorry.
I'm going to get it close. So we are backing up our kindergarten and pre-K enrollment from February now back to January. So we'll be starting that push for pre-K and kindergarten starting in January this next year. So that's a change in date. We have historically done transfers from March 1 to April 30. And we are backing up our internal transfers to, I believe, February 1, to the month of February, I'm going to say, for lack of having the exact dates. And then, so we would allow internal transfers to happen first. And then we will publish capacity. It has to be done on or before May 1st. So the idea would be to publish our open capacity seats to the board in April. And then we would open up the out-of-district enrollment window for the month of June. And everyone would be notified, if I remember correctly, somewhere around July 15th on whether they were accepted or not. And if they're not accepted, we must tell them why.
Thank you.
And as far as a budget financial impact, I don't know that we have one. I don't know that we even have a good guess of what open enrollment would be like.
Thus, the consideration of current year enrollment being considered.
Correct. Especially I think for us, I mean, we have some room for growth to get back to where we want to be. But for some districts that are rapidly growing, I think there's a big concern for that.
Okay, thank you for that update, and we'll move on to the bond update.
Okay, thank you. We're at a fun but busy time of the bond. We have 3 projects that are close to wrapping up. We have one of our rebuild of brand new elementaries about halfway done. We're in the final finishing stages of getting ready to plan to start Tomahawk in January. And we've also got, we're planning 2 new projects. So I'll just run down what we have here coming up. And right there is a picture of Rushton. Now those are renderings from Insight Design and J.E. Dunn. And so our students, as you know, are currently being housed at the old Westwood View. And we're right on schedule, and we're looking at opening up in fall of 2024. But again, those are renderings of what it will look like. So those are actual pictures of Rushton. Was just out there Tuesday. It was a little bit muddy. You'll see that the walls are up and the roof is about 80% completed. So once we get that roof done and we get the windows in, we'll really start making some real progress inside of the building. And then when you start seeing the stone on the outside, it really starts to come to fruition, and you start get a better visualization of it. So there's some pictures of the inside. You can see that the interior walls and the framing is being installed, and the MEP progress is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So all of that is in the stages right now before we start putting the walls up. So right there is Tomahawk Elementary, about 79,000 square feet. It will be the largest of our 5 elementary buildings. And so a small portion of that school will be coming from the Briarwood boundary change that will be attending Tomahawk. It will be opening in August of 2025. We did finalize construction bids in October, the first week of October. While, as I've said numerous times at this meeting in this group or committee, that the pre-bid estimates, it certainly did come in high, but it was not as high as we thought that it might. So while it is higher, we're still in good shape financially, and I'll be meeting with Mr. Knapp and his team. We started meeting more and more frequently, making sure that we are good fiscal stewards of the money that we have. So elementary is going to be absolutely beautiful. It's going to be a beautiful building. So this,
I was joking we should add your name, Russ, to those plaques, just for
he's already suggested that.
eking out the financial support to make us through this, through this bond. We'll post-it note.
So that is Shawnee Mission South, and so that is one of our projects that we started a year ago, and the majority of the construction was done through the summer. So that is the new weight room. That used to be the stage gym, if you're familiar with in the gym at Shawnee Mission South, and so you'll see the large glass wall. It has logo on the front of that glass, and that is a large training facility. So we also have an ADA elevator to have access to right outside of that, so that was very much needed at Shawnee Mission South, but that is a beautiful facility to be used by all kids in that weight room. And you'll see to the right that Shawnee Mission South had renovations in all of their restrooms, as well as the addition of a privacy restroom, which went into every middle school and high school. We had a student advisory group meeting this morning, and they were just commenting on how, I think they called the restrooms bougie, right? All bougie, so I need to get updated apparently. But they were saying how awesome the restrooms were and how much all of the kids loved that. And they also have a storefront window on their cafeteria, and it seems like Shawnee Mission South got an awful lot, but the difference is the schools that had additions to their building for these projects, for either the 3.6 or the 5 million, if you had an addition that went outside of the current scope, it's quite a bit more. It's almost triple. And so the schools that chose to have the retrofit or the redoing of their current building, it seems like they were able to get more bang for their buck. And so with South getting all of their restrooms done, updated and current, and the weight room, and their cafeteria, I think some of the kids were kind of like, well, why didn't North? We just got the restroom in the back. Well, they did the addition, and anytime you go outside, the price per square foot is just extremely, extremely high.
I thought it was a really good conversation with the kids, though, just to understand that piece of it. But then they were also, I explained to them, your parents paid for this. Your tax dollars are paying for this. And so knowing what your projects are, could you walk out of Shawnee Mission South or Shawnee Mission North or Northwest or wherever and say, this was a great use of public tax dollars. Like, could you support that? And they were like, and that's when they were like, absolutely, those bathrooms are bougie. And one girl actually said, I feel like I'm at the airport. I feel like I'm in a professional place. And so they were all, it was just kind of fun to listen to them and explain like this is your tax dollars. It's why it's important to vote. And so it was fun.
Yeah, they were really positive. It was nice to hear it was nice to hear the good feedback from the kids.
That's real affirmation too, right? From the user perspective.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Was. So next is Hocker Grove Middle School. So that is not a rendering there on the left. That is the actual project. And while we are not done, we still have some painting and some flashing and things like that, little ins and outs. But so Hocker Grove is kind of in a U shape and in the middle there. And so with the hallways being kind of congested and a lot of kids, they were looking for some type of connection between the two academic wings. So we created an outdoor classroom, we created an additional classroom, and then a hallway that's kind of indoor-outdoor. So it is covered on the north side, and then it is open on the south side, and that is artificial turf that comes out into an area to even add on to the additional playground there. So it's really neat. If you get a chance to go inside there and walk through it, it really looks nice. As well as the facelift to the front of the building, it really looks nice. So we do got a variation of 2 different colors there that is being fixed right now as we speak almost, so that will be cleaned up. And if you look on the right, you'll see the picture of the additional bus loop that we added there, which has just been amazing. We get all of our buses in there, double stacked. We get all of the cars off of Johnson Drive, and it looks kind of open. It really looks nice, but you will see we've got a lot of trees coming in to be replanted. So we're going to finish the construction piece, then we'll come back with a lot more landscaping that's really going to add to what Hocker Grove looks like. And so, again, you get a chance to drive by there. It looks great. Next to the new bus loop on the right, you'll see the red, which is where the parents pull in. We completely redesigned the traffic flow, so they pull all the way through and to the front. And on the far left there, you'll see is the auxiliary gym, and then that's where they stop. The parents are double stacked all the way through there, and then they just pull out and turn right as soon as they pick up their child. So it was quite a challenge to find that room in front of that school to get those cars off of Johnson Drive, but we heard our patrons, community members, and taxpayers loud and clear, and we made that happen. We also had to spend a little bit extra, so we took it out of capital outlay for the bus loop. So that's part of their 3.6. Next is Trail Ridge. So on your left, you will see we told you that we were changing Trail Ridge around to where the back end of the building would now be the front end of the building. Again, this was all tied to safety issues as well as getting the traffic congestion fixed. And so let me start on the right side. You'll see we extended the bus loop, the orange there at the front there on the right-hand side of the picture. So we extended the bus so we could double stack all of the buses and get them off of Quivira so we can hold all of our buses there. And just on the back side of the building there, the parent loop goes around there so we can double stack all of those cars and get them off of 75th Street. And going back to the right-hand side, you'll see that is where the new office is going to be. And it's kind of hard to visualize in that picture, but keep that in your mind, and let's go to the next frame. And that's what it's going to look like on your right.
Nice.
So it's really going to be nice. It's going to be a nice entrance. And they also received a restroom, a privacy set of restrooms. And so that's where that money is going there. All right, these are our 2 new projects. I'm really not going to elaborate a whole lot because these are drafts, and I kind of want to make sure that that's clear. They're drafts because we're still in the planning stage. Those are rendering, obviously, and financially, we have to try to make it fit into budget. So you will see there that is on the north side of the building, kind of by their soccer field. That is a proposed new fitness and training room, as well as they could use that for dance, cheerleading, all kind of different activities that they have there, any types of classes. So we're real excited about that, but it's pretty expensive, and so we're looking at a way to make that fit for Shawnee Mission West, and they'll also get the restrooms as well. So we're just in such beginning stages. I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse. And Indian Hills is next, and they are looking for an addition of a collaboration space. So if you walk in the front office, you go down the hallway just a little bit to your right, and on the back side, a brand new large classroom addition, team building, makerspace room. They've got a whole lot of ideas in which to use that area for. The challenge we've run into is the grade of the ground is very challenging. So that's why we don't have more pictures of that, because we have a lot of architectural challenges that we're working through, and every time we make an architectural change, we have to go to J.E. Dunn and see how much it's going to cost, and then can we tweak this, can we tweak that? So that's why we have so many meetings, not only here, but also at the site, to try and get this down to where it's going to be, again, fiscally responsible, but yet get them what they want that's going to be really helpful to our students and our staff, and that's going to make our taxpayers happy as well. So this, again, here is the project timeline. You'll see the red line, which is where we are currently in the bond. So lots of projects going on, lots of work that has been done, and not a whole lot to say about that. So you'll see we've already been issued $147 million. In the first part of the bond, and issue 2 was $143 million. You'll see the blue is the spent money, the red is encumbered, and the yellow is the remaining amount of money that we have left. So again, we meet with Russ and his team. I meet with my guys daily, and we're constantly in touch with the architects, construction companies, and it's just a lot of great two-way communication, lots of problems that we solve together, and I have an awful lot of good people that I work with each day, which is kind of bringing this bond to its fruition. So there's just a lot of good people that are working really hard.
That says remaining. Is that unspoken for money that I can like add new projects?
No, it's spoken for. It's just not encumbered. So we have a plan with all of our projects. I appreciate you asking that, and it'd be really exciting
If I didn't, somebody else would.
I know. So yes, that is it's spoken for. It's just not encumbered.
Melissa?
I would be remiss if I didn't ask, and forgive me if we've talked about this and I have lost track. The early childhood center upgrades, were those completed?
Yes, they have been completed. There is still some punch list items. So once it's finished, there's still some little tweaks and turns, but that's about it.
That's great. Thank you.
Have you been out to see it?
No, I need to.
You need to go out and see it.
I definitely
Yeah.
need to.
You really do.
And
I think
then-
we have a committee tour coming up.
That would be fun to see that. And then I just wanted to make mention of the fact that this week I've had reason to traverse Rainbow right at that witching hour when school is starting, and the fact that there are 2 buildings full of elementary kids, the parent drop-off and all the rest, traffic has been flowing, and I imagine between community effort and the district effort, I just wanted to mention, I appreciated
Well,
that.
thank you. I haven't heard a whole lot of positives on that, so thank you. We've worked hard. There's been a lot of speed bumps, but I think they've got it going pretty smooth. I really do. So the community's been great to work with. We work with both police departments, Westwood, and then ours, and so just a lot of things have been done to try and make that smoother.
I was going to go back to the red and yellow on the issue 2. So like the Tomahawk contract that we just approved, that would fall into the red. Is that correct? The Tomahawk?
These numbers as
Yep.
of September 30th. So Tomahawk, we would add 31 million in encumbrances on the next time that we
On the
would
next time, so
update.
that's still in the yellow?
It's still
It's
in the
still in the
Okay.
yellow for this slide.
Okay,
Next time would be in the red.
okay. So it's kind of that contract when it becomes encumbered, and like West right now, it'll be in the yellow for a while until that contract is
And
signed.
I want to clear, it was 31 million is what the bids came, but turnkey, which is all soft and hard costs and everything with it, was estimated at 34.8, so just under 35, and that's everything.
And this is the slide that we've talked about before, one more time about the encumbered and the yet-to-be remaining. We can play the arbitrage here, and that's where I would say, what, about 100 million? Or am I too high on how much cash we have generated from the bond yet to be spent that we can earn interest on?
Yeah, we did. That sounds about right, 100 million, and that's still invested out in the CD ladders that are still coming in. So that 143,969,000, that number will grow a little bit as those CDs mature and we are able to reinvest. Issue 1, after we get through October, we will use up all that cash. So, and then we'll have to do a final reconciliation that we send off to the IRS. But we will now be just totally spending issue 2 from here on out.
And so to play the spread, if we're picking up 4 to 5-ish on an annual basis on the CDs, but inflation goes higher than that, we're able to offset some of the inflated cost of these projects, but not enough, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to pick up probably maybe 6 to 7 million in additional interest income off this.
Okay, great.
You ready to keep going?
Yeah, any other questions on the bond projects or buildings before we move on to the next subject? All right, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, continue.
So the next agenda item, we're going to talk about special education funding and expenses. We talked about this at our October 2022 meeting. It's starting to, it's very close to legislative time and starting January. And, this was a hot topic last year. We almost got additional funding for it, but it never did make it through. And it'll be a hot topic again this spring. So I just wanted to refresh you on how we are funded. Special education is funded from a separate appropriation at the state level for special education state aid. We are reimbursed. We built our budget on $30,800 per teacher and para FTE. So these are positions and we're not talking enrollment students here. We're talking about a teacher and a para. Paras are reimbursed at 40%. Those two will generate about $17.6 million in state aid. We get reimbursed our special education transportation costs at 80%, another $7.3 million. Then we get Medicaid and catastrophic state aid of $180,000 and $100,000. So we'll get about a $25.2 million is what we're projecting out of this budget. Now, if you remember, these are reimbursement costs, so we send in estimates all school year long, and then in May, they kind of all settle, the state settles up. So X amount of dollars is appropriated through the budget process at the state level, and all that money gets distributed out to school districts. And so they start with catastrophic state aid, they pay all that at 100%, Medicaid, and then the transportation, and then what's left over in that appropriation, they just do the math and divide it out. And so that 30,800 number will change in May. It could go up. If it goes up, that means we'll get a little bit more money. If it goes down, we'll go a little bit less versus what we budgeted.
So I just want to ask a couple clarifying questions, if I may. Catastrophic state aid are those extraordinary costs for services that are very specific to the needs of high need.
Yeah, high need students. Yes.
Right, so that's why that's 100%. Can we talk about the Medicaid replacement item? I'm wondering if the eligible population were to be expanded, would that help the district get reimbursement for more costs for more students if Medicaid expansion happened? Or I guess I'm trying to understand, so I honestly don't remember the relationship between children in the system, in the Medicaid system.
That question, because Christy Ziegler and I just had this conversation this week in regards to, we were talking about Medicaid expansion and should we have that on our legislative platform? Because if it expanded, would it expand the dollars that we get? And stay tuned, because we're asking those questions. We just talked about that, and I talked with Stuart a little bit. So I don't know the answer, to be completely honest with you, but I have to believe if Medicaid was expanded, that services that our kids would receive, therefore Medicaid reimbursement to us would have to increase. But again, I can't answer that definitively, but we're having those conversations.
The other question, this may be really deep in the weeds, but we certainly, in the world that I work in, are looking at the Medicaid codes and ways for early childhood age kids to receive services and have different ways of billing for more reimbursement of certain services. And I know there is a category of services that districts provide outside of the IEP is it 504 plans? Is that the,
Well, it's not outside of an IEP, it's something different than an
different than
IEP.
an IEP, right?
Yes.
So kids that aren't on IEPs but need certain things. It seems to me there's a free care rule at the federal level related to 504 services that has been in place since 2014 that this state has not taken steps to allow for drawdown based on this rule. And I know that is another item that I think ought, if in your exploration of other issues related to the reimbursement costs besides the funding formula, there is a rule that if the state of Kansas were to adjust state policy, more of the 504 plan services could be reimbursed.
And just to add, Dr. Hubbard referenced Stuart, and just as a reminder, Stuart Little is our lobbyist who, okay, this one down.
I do want to point out, though, in regards to $180,000 of Medicaid is really a small number for us. So if we're going to focus our efforts, we should continue to focus on ones that are significant impact to our budget.
Now, quick, so are you going to layer in the conversation about the 92% and how
Yes.
that's, okay, just wanted to jump the gun, okay.
2 slides, but, okay, so this is our budget for the current year, 23-24. Our total expenditure budget is $61.3 million. That does include close to $7.6 million in federal Title 6B. That's the your SPED funding program through the federal government. State aid, again, what we just talked about, 25.2. Interest income, we're actually generating some in the last couple of years, 1.8 million. And then the rest would come from our supplemental general fund and a transfer of close to $25 million to make up the revenue to support the expenditures of $61.3 million.
Russ, the formula requires so we always hear about the 92% of excess costs the state should be paying. That's calculated after the federal number is determined. It's the cost of delivering these services above and beyond whatever the percentage is, or the amount you get from the federal, right?
Right.
So then but it still leaves 8% of excess costs that is the responsibility of the district. So are you getting there?
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to
Okay.
ask what that amount would be that we know we are supposed to pay out of local resources versus what this district is actually having to pay.
Sure. So if you want to take a look at this slide, you've seen this in the past, and I've updated it with the last year, 22-23 actual. So our excess cost came in at 64.1%, so it went down about 2%. And so to get to that 92% excess cost level, we would need 10.7 million more in state aid from the state of Kansas. The state, they reported out that they are now at 76% of their excess costs, so they went down a little bit as well. Federal government is at 16.8. So they added $7.5 million at the state level. Well, school districts' costs are increasing much higher than $7.5 million statewide. So it's always going to continue to decrease until they put some significant more funding into their SPED appropriation.
So I know from watching some of the interim committee hearings that there appears to be interest in looking at how to reformulate the calculation. And there's scrutiny over the amount of local option budget funding that districts generate based on the amount of money they get in their special ed fund being added to the budget number that the percentage of LOB is based on, right? I have been wondering for Shawnee Mission, since this is my home district, this is where my head always goes when I'm looking for examples. Again, related to you're already covering costs of special education that they're not willing to acknowledge in the legislature. What is that number, the amount, the dollar amount of the local option budget that would be the amount of the LOB generated by including the special ed funding? Are you following? And you may not be able to answer in the
Well,
moment. but-
if you back up one slide, Jennifer. So are you talking about the $25 million that we're transferring from supplemental general?
No, it's a different math equation. So when you calculate the number that is multiplied to get the 33%
Yeah.
LOB,
Yeah.
that budget number includes your special ed funding that you're getting from the state, and what there's legislative interest in dividing out that portion of your local option budget funding
Okay.
that is gained because you've added the special ed into that math equation. I respect that may be really detailed that isn't available during this meeting, but I am curious because I still feel like we're still under, like, no matter how you slice it, we're not receiving the amount of money.
Well,
So
isn't it?
you're, sorry, Brian, you're referencing the 33% on the weighting for special ed that goes through the general state aid formula.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so that, quick estimate was about 8.4 million LOB is generated because we get to run sped through the formula.
So it's about the amount that this district would need to have to fund the 8% obligation, correct? So if lawmakers try to rearrange the words in the formula and the math equation to double up and count existing resources, you still have a shortfall of about
2 million.
Yeah, so it just isn't tracking that there isn't a shortfall.
I guess I would say that if you remember, the legislative post-audit did their audit, and we ranged from like almost as low as 45% excess costs all the way up to 200. So I would say you're going to have a shortfall on those school districts that are on that spectrum. And then there's going to be your large urban districts that pay higher salaries. Right. And then your smaller districts that pay a little bit lower salary. They might match that shortfall. They might break even, or they might even make a little money on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I was going to say, wasn't the math just 33% of 25 million? I mean, isn't that it?
Yeah.
There you go.
It is. Yeah.
Because if you take the amount, well, I'm not doing the because, that's where I got it,
Yeah, you're right.
So do you have a sense of what our total special education-related expenditures are? A little over 30 million total?
Our special education budget, it's 61.3 million.
I mean, yeah.
Is that what you're?
Sorry, I was off by, I was thinking more of, budget versus expenditures. We exceed the 61 million in expenditures.
No.
No.
That's our total budget. We'll probably come in less than that because of fallout from vacancies. We really can't exceed that.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. I'm with you now.
Yeah, so the bottom line is that our shortfall that we're taking from the general fund that should be going to other programming is the $25 million.
That's correct.
And that those dollars, if funded to the 92%, would get us closer to that number, and then we could use those numbers back to fund the original items that are supposed to be funded from general
correct.
operating.
You'd put that into your regular daily operations for general education.
So take the math all the way back to the state level to fully fund special ed to the number. What is the cost of that? And I remember hearing that number in the legislative session this year.
I believe it's 155 million more a year.
Okay. And so of the 155, ours would be the, you just had it. I'm just trying to
No,
figure
that's
out.
got to be more than that.
I remember it wasn't a terribly large, I mean, I was surprised how big the number, it wasn't that big, but it's all relative. The point is I'm going with this, is that with today's current finances within the state is a digestible number.
Yes.
I believe it was 70, they were going to do 72 million for 5 years.
That was the
Yes.
phase-in plan, but that's,
Phase-in plan.
if you're asking what, like, they could, in using, monthly revenue excess, they could easily fund the differential. I think 155 million is the actual number from last year, that, the gap.
To go right away.
To go right away, yeah. So the state board said, all right, well, if we at least work to phase it in over 5 years, it would be a step increase every year.
The other question I want to layer into this, and maybe you've touched on it, is are there other federal requirements that we're held to that we're then not funded to by the federal government as well?
Yes. Well, the feds aren't meeting their obligation either. Yeah. The federal government was on. The federal government is not meeting their obligation either.
I believe IDEA says federal reimbursement will be up to 40% of the cost, and
We're at about
16%
Yeah.
and falling, it looks like, so.
So again, what I'm trying to point out is that we're carrying the load for both the federal mandated pieces and the state pieces out of our general operating, which I find irony that we're also adding to by our own electorate saying we approve the LOB, so we're already assessing ourselves for those same dollars in order, essentially filling a lot of those gaps. Did I tie that thread accurately?
You did,
Yeah.
and Brad, I would point to, you don't just have federal mandatory services that you have to provide. There are state laws that require services above and beyond what the feds require, that Kansas lawmakers have determined to be, the value judgment is our kids deserve gifted education. Our kids with dyslexia deserve services. Our autistic kids deserve special services. So there have been changes in Kansas at the statutory level to add in additional required services that are part of the reason for the shortfall.
Thank you. And it was important that we walk through this because this is going to be, first of all, it's very complex math, but secondly, it's going to be a continued conversation within the general public as well as the legislative process this year. If I could layer one more piece to this, is as a school district, we then are trying to employ the best folks possible to carry out these services. And I might ask, at what level is that difficulty to hire folks to be able to fill these positions in order to take care of these special students?
And all students, because you're diverting funding out of your general operating budget that you could be using for the staff.
Hiring special education and especially support staff to support those special education teachers and students is still our most difficult area to staff,
Okay.
by far.
And we as a board have tried working with staff as best we can to increase the compensation for those that are providing those services in order to attract. But therein lies the levers that we're trying to pull in order to continue to balance that.
And we made good gains in the last 2 years, but we still are not even close to keeping up with the rest of the market that we're competing with.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to put that around it.
And I would remind everyone that paraprofessionals require 48 credit hours. I believe it's 45 or 48 credit hours to be a para. And if you think about people that have that much credit hours, they can get jobs that are paying a lot better than what we are paying. Again, we've made good gains, really good gains, but competing is difficult.
So you're referencing the competition is not necessarily other districts, but other
I'm talking
job
about,
fields?
yes,
other markets?
absolutely. Actually, in comparison to other districts, we're in really pretty good shape.
Anything else on the special ed funding? Questions? Thank you for walking us through that. It's always helpful. I learn something every time. We have on the agenda next to talk about the calendar. The dates for our meetings in 2024 are to be determined, but we're looking at the months of February, March, August, and October of next year. So we'll look to get those dates in the books so that we can announce those as quick as possible so people can get it on their calendars as well. A couple other items here. I do want to acknowledge one more time the nice honor that Dr. Hubbard received this past week as the Superintendent of the Year. So again, congratulations, well deserved, and it's a nice reflection on your work, the team's work, and the district as a whole.
Thank you.
Secondly, I think I heard a really good idea about having a tour of the Early Childhood Center, so maybe we can add that for our schedule when the punch list is taken care of.
Give me an idea of when you'd like to, and
Okay.
I can let you know. If you want to reach out, I'll let you know when that's finalized. But if you were to walk through it right now, the punch list was pretty minimal.
Yeah, we're early next year. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order here? There's an election coming up just around the corner, and we continue to encourage everyone to vote. All the races are very important, especially those that affect what goes on in Shawnee Mission directly, but all the way up the education channel from local public ed to our community colleges and beyond. So not only make sure you vote, but encourage others to vote as well.
I think early voting starts in a couple days. Yes? 28th?
Yeah.
Saturday? Early voting, and votesjoco.org is the Johnson County website for lots of information about candidates. Great site.
Back to the calendar real quick. Do you just want us to fill in those dates and
Yeah.
get back with you?
I think that's the best way to do it so that we can have a consistency to it and folks know in advance. You bet. Does that sound good?
All right, we'll get those done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Take care.